English is everywhere. It appears on airport signs in countries where almost nobody speaks it at home. It is used in scientific papers, business contracts, software code, pop music, tourism, diplomacy, and online conversations between people who may share no other language. But English did not begin as a world language. It began as a regional language on an island at the edge of Europe, spoken by communities whose influence was once limited and local. Its rise was not inevitable, and it was not caused by one simple feature like being especially easy or unusually logical. English became global because history placed it at the center of migration, conquest, empire, industry, science, and modern media. To understand why English has more total speakers than any other language today, we have to start with what it actually is, a Germanic language with a deeply mixed vocabulary and a uniquely global modern role. English belongs to the Indo-European language family, one of the world's largest language families. Within that family, it is classified as a West Germanic language, meaning it is related to languages such as German, Dutch, Low Saxon, and Frisian. This matters because, despite English's huge number of words borrowed from French and Latin, its grammatical skeleton remains Germanic. The most basic everyday words are still largely Germanic, words for family, body parts, common actions, numbers, and simple objects. Words like house, water, bread, mother, father, sleep, come, go, and eat connect modern English to its older Germanic roots. So English may look like a hybrid on the surface, especially in formal vocabulary, but underneath it still carries the structure and sound patterns of the language group it came from. The name English comes from the Angles, one of the Germanic peoples who migrated to Britain after the end of Roman rule. Along with groups such as the Saxons and Jutes, they brought West Germanic dialects to early medieval England. These dialects developed into what we now call Old English. Old English was not simply an older version of the English spoken today. To modern readers, it often looks like a foreign language. Its grammar had more inflections, its word order was more flexible, and much of its vocabulary is unfamiliar to present-day speakers. Early writing sometimes used runes, a script associated with Germanic peoples, before the Latin alphabet became the main writing system for longer texts. The roots of English, then, are tied to migration, settlement, and the gradual formation of a new society in post-Roman Britain. Old English did not develop in isolation. One of its major early influences came from Old Norse, the North Germanic language spoken by Scandinavian settlers and invaders, often associated with the Viking Age. Contact between Old English and Old Norse affected both vocabulary and grammar. Some borrowed Norse words became extremely common, not just specialized terms. Words such as they, them, their, sky, take, and get reflect this contact. That is important because it shows that English was shaped not only by elite literature or formal institutions, but also by everyday interaction between communities. When related languages meet, speakers can often understand parts of each other's speech, and over time their language boundaries may blur. The Norse influence helped push English towards simplification in certain grammatical endings and added words that became part of ordinary daily speech. The next great turning point came in 1066, with the Norman conquest of England. The Normans were rulers from northern France who spoke a French dialect, and after their conquest, French became the language of the court, the aristocracy, law, and administration. Latin remained important in the church, scholarship, and formal writing. English did not disappear, but its status changed dramatically. For generations, England became a multilingual society, with English spoken by much of the population, French used by ruling elites, and Latin used in religious and learned contexts. This social division left a permanent mark on the language. English absorbed a vast number of French and Latin words, especially in law, government, literature, food, art, religion, and abstract thought. The language of ordinary life survived, but it became layered with the vocabulary of power. This is one reason modern English has so many near synonyms with different tones. A simple Germanic word may sit beside a more formal French or Latin-derived word. We say ask, but also inquire. We say kingly, but also royal. We say start, but also commence. We say help, but also assist. These pairs are not always exact matches, but they give English an unusually large range of registers. A speaker can choose a plain, direct word or a more formal, technical, or prestigious one. Roughly speaking, French dialects contributed about 28% of modern English vocabulary, while Latin contributed another 28%. Taken together, Latin and the Romance languages account for a majority of the English lexicon. Yet the most frequent words, the words that hold sentences together, remain overwhelmingly Germanic. That mix gives English much of its modern character. After the Norman period, Old English gradually evolved into Middle English. This was not just a change in vocabulary, the structure of the language shifted too. Many older grammatical endings weakened or disappeared, and word order became more important for showing meaning. The Latin-based alphabet fully replaced older runic writing, and written English began to re-emerge in more visible public and literary roles. Middle English was the language of writers such as Geoffrey Chaucer, but even Chaucer's English can be difficult for modern readers without help. During this period, English existed in many regional forms, and spelling was far from standardized. The language was alive, flexible, and changing quickly. It had survived elite replacement after the Norman Conquest, but in surviving, it had transformed into something quite different from its Anglo-Saxon ancestor. The shift from Middle English to Modern English was partly shaped by one of the most famous sound changes in language history, the Great Vowel Shift. Between the late Middle Ages and the early modern period, many long vowel sounds in English changed their pronunciation. This is one major reason English spelling can feel so confusing today. Many words were written down in ways that made sense before pronunciations shifted, but the spelling often remained while the sounds moved on. For example, the pronunciation of words like time, house, and meat changed over centuries, but writing did not always keep pace. The printing press later helped stabilize spelling, even as speech continued to vary. So the difficulty of English spelling is not random, it is partly a fossil record of earlier pronunciations, sound changes, and historical standardization. By the early modern period, English had become the dominant language in England and was expanding with English-speaking settlement, trade, and political power. But its later global spread was tied above all to the expansion of the British Empire. Through colonization, English was established in North America, the Caribbean, parts of Africa, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific. In some places it became the main language of settlers and their descendants. In others, it became a language of administration, education, law, or trade, often existing alongside many local languages. This history was not neutral or gentle, it was connected to conquest, displacement, inequality, and imperial rule. But it explains why English became geographically widespread, with official or co-official status in dozens of sovereign states and dependent territories across the world. The United States then became another major force in the global rise of English. As American economic, military, scientific, and cultural influence grew, English became increasingly central to international life. The United States played a major role in 20th century technology, aviation, film, popular music, higher education, computing, and the Internet. Hollywood, global advertising, multinational corporations, academic publishing, and later Silicon Valley all helped reinforce English as a practical language of opportunity and connection. Importantly, English spread not just because English-speaking countries promoted it, but because non-native speakers adopted it as a shared tool. If a German company works with a Korean supplier, or a Brazilian scientist collaborates with a Japanese researcher, English is often the bridge language, even when no native English speaker is involved. Today, English is often described as a global lingua franca. A lingua franca is a language used for communication between people who do not share a native language. English fills that role in diplomacy, science, technology, international trade, logistics, tourism, aviation, entertainment, and much of the Internet. It is a co-official language of major international organizations, including the United Nations and the European Union. According to ethnologue estimates, there were over 1.4 billion English speakers worldwide as of 2021. But most of them are not native speakers. English is the most widely learned second language in the world, with more second language speakers than native speakers. That makes modern English unusual. Its global identity is shaped as much by learners and multilingual users as by people who speak it from birth. There is an important distinction between total speakers and native speakers. English is often called the most spoken language in the world when native and second language speakers are counted together. But as a native language, it ranks behind Mandarin Chinese and Spanish. This difference reveals how English functions globally. Mandarin has an enormous native speaker base, especially in China. Spanish has hundreds of millions of native speakers across Spain and Latin America. English, by contrast, has become powerful because it is learned and used across borders. It is dominant in countries such as the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, and New Zealand for historical reasons, even where it may not be explicitly defined by law as the official language. Elsewhere, it may be official, co-official, educational, professional, or simply useful. So the story of English is not the story of a perfectly designed language conquering the world. It is the story of a Germanic language reshaped by Norse contact, transformed by Norman French and Latin, altered by major sound changes, and then carried globally by empire, migration, commerce, science, technology, and media. Its vocabulary preserves layers of conquest and scholarship. Its spelling preserves traces of older pronunciations. Its grammar preserves its Germanic ancestry. And its modern role reflects the choices of billions of people who use it as a bridge across linguistic boundaries. English became global because power made it widespread, usefulness made it attractive, and repeated use made it self-reinforcing. The result is a language that began in early medieval England but now belongs, in practice, to the world. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.